Hey, hey everyone. Good afternoon. It's Lydia Crafts. How's everyone? Sorry, just getting started. Hey, good afternoon. This is Lydia Crafts. I'm a representative for House District 90 here in Newcastle, Maine. This includes Damascotta, Bristol, Bremen, Newcastle, parts of South Bristol, parts of Noblesboro, Monhegan Island. So thank you so much for joining me. It took me a few minutes. Sorry for the delay. For those of you that don't know me already, I am a resident of Newcastle. I work as a clinical social worker down at the Bristol Consolidated School. I grew up in Belfast with my family there and met my husband and moved down to Newcastle about 10 years ago. I have a stepdaughter, Amelia, who's 13, and a daughter, Kestrel, who is just about to turn 5. And my husband, Kevin, is a science teacher at the Bristol School. So we all commute down the peninsula each day when we are typically in school, which we are not right now. So first I want to start, thank you for joining me. I want to just kind of give a little bit of an update, both personally, what's been happening, and then also update folks on my campaign and where things are, as things have changed pretty dramatically. So I am home. My husband and I are both home. We're lucky to continue to have work and employment and benefits. Our girls are home also doing remote learning, which looks very different if you can imagine a 5-year-old and a 13-year-old, pre-K and 8th, a pretty big expanse. We are, everything about a month ago, everything flipped upside down for most of us. So Kevin and I are working hard to fulfill all of our work obligations and balance parenting and also supporting the girls. There's been a lot of discussion at school amongst friends and folks around about how do we do this best and what are fair expectations. And I keep sharing with teachers and folks in our professional meetings that it's really hard. It is really hard to be a teacher and a parent all in your home 24 hours a day. And I think it's given me good perspective being a parent and working in schools, being able to see like our expectations right now are really on getting through the day, maintaining our relationships with one another, having some fun, making sure all of our basic needs are met, and maybe doing a little bit of learning if we have the bandwidth to. So that's been a lot of us adjusting to a routine or lack of routine as we see it now. I've been lucky to participate in some phone banking for Chloe Maxman in some free time. As many of you probably already know, Chloe is a representative in House District 88, the Whitefield, Chelsea, part of Noblesboro area. And she's decided to run for state Senate, Senate District 13, which encompasses House District 90. And I'm really excited about her campaign. They've paused right now to reach out to folks in the whole Senate district, specifically folks who are older, I believe right now over 65. And they have a team of volunteers phone banking. And I think I heard last night she and the team had made 7,500 phone calls to reach out to folks, get them to medical appointments, get them food, medication, whatever important services they need that or needs that are going unmet. She's working really hard to get folks connected. So it's been exciting to phone bank with her and to see what an incredible network of volunteers she has, and also have a chance to talk to people. So I've been grateful for that opportunity. And then on the side, I'm a member of the Sheepscot Community Church, and as you can imagine, church services have changed and what they look like. So we have transitioned to virtual church services. We're using Zoom. Everyone has gotten up to speed, and it's been exciting to be able to celebrate and worship together. We had our Easter services this past week, and it's great. It's just another sign of how a close-knit community can come together. And one of the really bright spots was Susie and Brad Craig. Susie's one of our pastoral team members. They provided daffodils at the church, tied up in separate bundles for folks to stop by and pick up. And I believe she said at the end of the afternoon on Easter, 27 bunches of daffodils had been picked up by neighbors or folks stopping by. So it was great to see. It was a beautiful, thoughtful idea they had. And I was really excited to bring some daffodils home myself. We can all use a little bit of a bright spot in our days. A little bit about my work. So I run a special education behavior program that serves 4 of the 5 schools in our AOS. Special education right now has been big in the news around what are the limitations of remote learning and how do we continue to teach kids while also making sure that we're meeting special education requirements. There's a lot of there's kind of the legal aspect of that and abiding by IEPs, but also just best practice of if we're expecting children and families to be performing and completing work, how are we providing accommodations to children in special education? So this has taken a lot of energy. Our entire administrative team in this district is incredible. Folks are working really hard and trying to be creative. One of the awesome opportunities I have as a therapist is to meet with children and families virtually. So I've been providing telehealth services for the last 3 weeks, and it's great. It's incredible. I will put a plug there for broadband internet service that for children and families without internet, which we know is a reality for lots and lots of communities in this rural state. That severely limits their ability to participate in schooling, both educational and mental health, social emotional services. So I've been really grateful for all of the families that have been willing to participate and for me to be able to continue to make a connection with those children I work with at school every day. I don't know if folks know, but while I'm relatively reserved and quiet, I also consider myself quite an extrovert in that I really, I chose my work because I love being with people. I love relationships and engaging with folks. And it's been hard. The reality of being home, it's such a big limit on our human interaction. So I've been excited to be able to see kids and pets and see homes and what's going on. Lots of creative art projects in families' homes, and I love to see that. Let's see. Pender Macon, our Department of Education commissioner, has just submitted an op-ed into a lot of papers around the state talking about safety right now for children in their homes. And this is a huge priority with school counselors, social workers, other support staff in schools right now. The concern of not having kids in front of us to assess and make sure that all of their needs are met, and the unfortunate reality that child abuse and unsafe living in environments are a reality for a lot of folks. And so I was really happy to see Commissioner Macon speak out about that and to really provide some meaningful development for to check in and to see that kids are doing okay and families have what they need. Hey, Susie, it's nice to see you signed on. Thanks, Kaylee. So child safety, child abuse, and neglect, which in times of stress and added anxiety is always a risk. And we want to make sure that teachers and support staff are prepared for engaging with families, supporting them primarily, and then also knowing the signs to look for if a family is really struggling and really asking for or needing more help and more support. And it's important that we have that awareness. Thanks, Emily, for your support. An incredible thing in this area, prior to COVID-19, a lot of folks and a lot of community organizations were working hard at food insecurity and addressing the food needs of children, families, individuals, elders, folks going without the adequate nutrition. And so as soon as the virus came up on everyone's radar, I would say in early to mid-January, school counselors started talking about how are we going to make sure that children and families had food during this crisis. And without a hitch, schools came together and started providing food immediately. There each school in our AOS is doing things a little bit differently. But what I've heard across the board are school staff, cafeteria staff coming in every day and producing food, meals for children 18 and under with no eligibility requirements. So any child in our district has access to meals, to 2 meals a day. There are school deliveries to families. So school bus drivers are driving food, academic materials, other diapers, formula for younger children, and delivering it one-on-one to households safely. And I think it's incredible. I was just talking with a couple of building administrators hearing, it looks to me like between 750 and 800 children a day are accessing meals at local schools. That's not an exact number, but it's pretty astonishing. And I'm so proud of our school systems for really stepping up right now and making sure that children have food. In addition to that, the Lincoln County Food Initiative has come together, which has been an amazing grassroots opportunity. Started with Main Street Grocery and Fernald's Country Store when, as many of you may know this, but when Fernald's closed its doors due to safety issues, they had a bunch of food to donate, and they called up Jane Gravel at Main Street Grocery, and they started making meals for people and delivering them to folks' homes. And it took off. They had a 24-hour fundraiser. I believe they raised over $5,000 for meals. And now community organizations, Lincoln Academy, Cave Wavis, the CLCY, Main Street Grocery, Fernald, a bunch of folks have come together. The Lincoln Ecumenical Food Pantry, they have established a system for folks to access food, and they're delivering around 35 meals a day out into the community. 563-6658, I believe, is the number. I've also posted an image with community resources, so please, if anyone needs anything, it's there. So food insecurity has been a major initiative in this community, and they continue. I think the food pantry has seen an increase of around 20% usage, higher than average. I talked to town offices today, and it sounds like general assistance has not been heavily relied upon, but I want folks to know that it's there for this, as people are in economic and financial stress, that there are systems in place to help support folks. Yeah, let's see. Oh, and then my campaign. So that's work. And then how to run a campaign for House District 90. It's new to everyone. There are not easy, quick answers. And we've been talking a lot. I'm really proud to have participated in Emerge, which is a network helping Democratic women run and get elected to public office. And I have had so many awesome phone calls with my Emerge sisters and brainstorming sessions on how do we make this work? What does it look like to enter a primary? So the big changes have been, I stopped door knocking. I think March 12th was the day it hit, and I realized it was not in anyone's best interest for me to be visiting folks door to door. And so I switched gears and I focused on a few different parts of my campaign that were already there and already existed, but I've been putting more energy into them. So that includes a letter writing campaign. Everyone's been receiving a little bit more mail, I think. It's been nice. My girls' teachers have been sending mail, and it's been great to get letters through the postal service. So I've been working on that, getting in touch with constituents and voters. I've also been focused on social media. Here I am, right? Facebook Live. I've been making videos with updates to help folks feel connected and feel like there are folks out here and looking to engage and make sure that people have what they need. And then phone banking. So as I said before, I've been lucky to participate in Chloe's campaign, talking to folks in the community who are older and more isolated and potentially have more health vulnerabilities. I've also been talking to working folks and younger families. I think we each have felt the stress of this time in our own unique ways and talking to families who have children at home, are continuing to work from home or manage unemployment and figure out what things look like if they're out of work. I've heard from a lot of people about the really unique needs of Mid-Coast Maine, and that's primarily seasonal businesses, realizing that a lot of the federal money coming down addresses small businesses that are open right now and needing to shut down. But as everyone knows, in a vacation economy, we have a huge number of businesses that are not yet open, but are dependent on tourism dollars coming through our communities. So I've talked to inn owners, folks with bed and breakfasts, who are now needing to refund rentals and contracts that folks have booked out months and sometimes a year in advance, and they have staff who they anticipate hiring and bringing on board in the next few weeks, and they can't access those federal monies through the Paycheck protection program. So I know Shelley Pingree has talked a lot, and Governor Mills. They've both addressed the issue of needing to focus on changing the criteria for support that we're getting through the CARES Act to make sure that seasonal businesses and the fishing community really have more of a voice. I know there's this $300 million wrapped up in the CARES Act for the fishing community, but it sounds like it's being held up. No one's quite sure what's going to happen with it, how it will be allocated. And I think those two areas hit our community really hard, that the bottom has dropped out of the fishing industry right now. And I know folks have been eating a lot of local seafood, and it's a great way to support local fishing families. But also long term, we need to be talking about what it looks like to rebuild, and make sure that folks who are able to work and want to work and have been working really hard can continue to support themselves and be supportive of their families. Let's see, what else? I hear from people about work and home balance, keeping things in balance when you have children at home and now you're expected to work from home full time. And it's hard, right? It's hard to have children home and out of their regular structure and routine, as I mentioned before, and to work. And I think employers have been really understanding. I know the school district has been great and flexible around scheduling, and I hope that that's the experience of others. I'd be interested if people have other experiences. I'd love to hear about it. Yeah, and I'd invite anyone who has a question or comment, please include them in the comment section, and I'd love to engage with some more folks. Thanks, Will. Oh yeah, why I wanted to run. So I kind of go back to the two main reasons why I chose to run for office. A few years ago, there was some question about the seat opening up, and the teachers union approached me and said they were really interested in training public education union members to run for office. And I thought about all of the families I've worked with and students I support at school, and one of the biggest challenges I've seen in my work is the barriers to accessing community services, and that's mental health services and healthcare. And one of the issues that we see in our state are huge wait lists. And right now we have over 2,000 individuals on a waiting list for a service that they've been approved for, but we don't have a strong enough network of providers and access to those services. So when I call DHS, when I have a concern about a family who's been on a wait list for more than 6 months, the pushback I get is there's nothing we can do. There's nothing DHS can do. There's nothing that can change about that unless the legislature gets involved. And so as I heard that, as the teachers union was encouraging folks to run, I thought maybe this is a role, maybe this is a chance I can have to make a difference with the children and families that I work with. So that was some of my initial motivation. I also had just a personal experience of coming together with my community about 4 years ago. Many of you may have heard this before, but I was out walking with my daughter on Academy Hill. We live just out of town, past Lincoln Academy, and we love to walk to town. And there aren't sidewalks along the whole stretch, and I was nearly hit by a car. I was walking Kestrel in a stroller, and it was terrifying, and I was grateful that we weren't hurt. But what I really learned from that was my voice alone wouldn't get us sidewalks, and it wouldn't change the safety conditions and my quality of life in this community without coming together with more voices. And I heard this from the sheriff's department. I heard it from the town office, and I was so grateful. I took a pledge, or a petition, excuse me. I visited all of my neighbors on Timber Lane, and each door I knocked on, another neighbor, another friend signed a petition and said, we want to live in a safe neighborhood. We want to be able to walk to town. And in doing that, coming together, I realized that that's really the power. That unifying of voices gives leverage to make change. And while building new sidewalks is a really slow process, I did join our sidewalk committee. I'm now on the appeals board for the town of Newcastle. And I see that people in public office are working really hard to lift up voices. And when those voices speak up and have that representation, more good and more benefit happens for more of us. And I think that this time during COVID-19, during this pandemic, there's a lot of commentary on how many folks have been left behind, and the folks we are most dependent on, healthcare workers, often minimum wage employees, folks at the grocery store, folks delivering our mail, that there are a lot of people who have been left out of kind of our equation for success. And I think that now is a perfect opportunity for us to be prioritizing, recreating and rebuilding and taking the resilience from within our community and looking toward a future where more voices and more people benefit from the decisions we make. And I think it's an incredible time right now. I think the immediate stress and burden is felt a lot in our local towns and our neighborhoods and our individual homes. But I think we will need to rebuild, and we will need to have the safety and the health and the well-being and the financial security of our entire community and our entire state in the forefront of our decision making. So my work as a social worker, my work in our community, serving on boards, being on our appeals board, representing the voices of my neighbors, it's given me that opportunity to see the power in it. And I'm so grateful, and I feel passionate about running, and I'm excited for, even if the campaign looks different than we expected, I'm excited to be here and to continue to have a voice and to speak up. So thank you for that, Will. Carrie Leah, how are folks dealing with isolation? Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I would love to hear from people here how you're dealing with it. There's a lot of talk of self-care. I read a great article around people feeling that there are a lot of high expectations being put out there, like now's the time to write your first novel, now's the time to renovate your home, and that pressure and stress really doesn't take into consideration some of the sense of trauma and the difficulty of getting through this right now. And that when we look at sort of an end point or a transition away from this pandemic, we really should stay focused on arriving, that getting through and surviving this is our daily goal. And I like that our goal is to arrive. I try to focus on that. I think that people are trying to stay connected. I know both the remote nature of our state and also the vulnerabilities, of specific parts of our communities. So older people, people who have medical compromising conditions, need to take extra precautions. And so I encourage everyone, I know it's been important to me to reach out to family and friends and to be in touch daily, just to make sure that I can know that my friends and family are doing okay. And when I'm struggling, I have the opportunity to get that support, because it's hard it's hard when we're human beings used to that human interaction. We don't always have it. Thanks for that question. Emily, is there a resource list of Maine arts orgs providing online content for kids? That's a great question. Maine organizations, I have not seen anything specific to Maine. I know there are a lot of great opportunities online that kids and families have been using. I know Mo Willems has been offering daily drawing classes. But I'm not aware of a Maine arts organization. I'll have to look into that. Thank you for that question. So let's see, other just community updates, things I've heard about this week that I think it's important for everyone to be aware of. For folks living in House District 90 or kind of the Mid-Coast area, I hope you're able to check out LCTV, our public access broadcaster. They're doing daily updates or several times a week updates at Lincoln Health at the Miles campus. And it's been great to see the administrative team from the hospital getting up and talking about sort of the real life experience of the medical establishment here in our community. I think as a state, what are we at? 827 cases today. I think Dr. Shaw from the Maine CDC announced we have 12 cases in Lincoln County. I think 7 of those have recovered. So we have 5 active cases, and I don't believe any hospitalized patients. I do know that the long-term care facilities have been in the news. There are now 4 in the state of Maine, none of which are in Lincoln County or House District 90, where there have been COVID-19 outbreaks. Thank you, Daniel. I see you've listed some other arts programming. I appreciate it. So we're lucky and privileged that there have not been outbreaks. I know Lincoln Health has around 300 residents in their long-term care facilities, and they said that they have stepped up precautions and safety screening for staff and for residents. As we know, it's a terrible situation to be in for our loved ones or ourselves, and in close proximities when folks are staying need the services, need the care of a nursing facility or rehab, that they need to be there, and we want to make sure that they're safe and protected. I think that Governor Mills is working hard at making sure that facilities have PPE and the resources and plans in place to keep residents safe. Let's see. Telemedicine. I was part of the Bremen Library Forum back in February, and one of the conversations at that point was broadband expansion. And Bremen has a broadband committee, is looking at expanding internet coverage in their town, and the state has also just allocated, I believe Governor Mills approved $15 million towards broadband expansion. And when that conversation came up at the forum, my 2 points around the importance of broadband are education and telemedicine. So we see all of the children in Lincoln County AOS 93 schools relying on, or the majority of them needing and relying on internet to access their free and appropriate public education, right? FAPE. And that's a priority for our young folks, but also telemedicine and access to healthcare. Right now, Lincoln Health is providing a significant number of outpatient appointments by telephone and video conference each day. And if you do not have adequate internet coverage, you cannot access healthcare. And I think healthcare and education are 2 basic human rights. And so along with that, as part of that network of care, we need our communities to have adequate internet coverage. So that's an important piece that comes out of this. I'll pause. Kevin asks, as someone who works in public education, what are some insights and issues that you wish to bring to the table? Thanks, Kevin. Kevin's my husband. Public education. We have seen some great changes with Commissioner Macon coming in, and I think we're making important progress in public education, but there are a couple of significant pieces that we're still lacking. So the legislature has legally committed to 55% financial support of public education, and I think with this year's supplemental budget will be at around 52.5%. So we still have some significant difference to make up, because what I've seen in public education, I'm really proud of AOS 93. I'm proud of the schools in our district. I think we do an incredible job educating children in school and now out of school. But I also know that some of our community has a much higher tax base than other rural communities in our state. And I think that it's an injustice for the quality of a child's education to be based on the socioeconomic status of that community. And I would work to bring that equality and that sense of justice to education across the board. And I think that that starts with fully funding public education across the state. I also think it's really important to look at education and educators as a professional group of folks who know how to teach and who are working really hard, tirelessly, to provide high quality education. I think there's been some distancing from fully acknowledging and valuing the skills of teaching, and that some of the initiatives in our state in the last 10 years have really called into question the skills and ability of our teachers. And I think that the MEA, the Maine Teachers Union, is working really hard to continue to support teachers. And I think as a state, we need to do that, because as you can see now, the creativity and the flexibility and the endurance and resilience of our teachers in our state is phenomenal. And I think that there are ways that our state can continue to support the work they're doing. Will says, my wife's a psychologist. Can you talk about the needs for Maine mental health service following the pandemic? Yeah, that's a great question, Will. Well, I think there are a couple of things. I think that the isolation that we a month ago considered to be temporary felt really big at the time, that this would look hard on our communal mental health as we got through possibly 4 weeks of isolation, right? And now here we are in mid-April, and I know our superintendent just announced that the administrative team is looking into what will happen next fall. And so we're talking about months of social isolation, and we need to be proactively planning for what that will look like to provide the support and services to people and individuals. I know the Portland Press Herald has covered some incidents that involve law enforcement with individuals who I think are likely demonstrating some crisis behaviors. So I think continuing to support crisis services and to make sure that folks are aware of those crisis services across the state, to know that those continue to be available to people regardless of the pandemic, and that we have medical providers and psychiatric care for folks who are in need. The other piece of this and of our recovery efforts is we have a real challenge in the state of Maine with reimbursement rates. And going back to my initial motivation to run, there's a reason that we have really limited community-based mental health services. And one of those reasons is the reimbursement rates of MaineCare, our Medicaid program. Our rates are extremely low. And when you have low rates, it's really hard for nonprofit or community-based agencies to provide those services. And I think that we heard prior to this pandemic, agencies in central Maine talking about closing. I know the legislature was taking up pay rate increases in midwinter. That we have direct support professionals, DSPs, PSSs, BHPs, lots of acronyms, but people doing the frontline work of providing mental health services to children, to adults, to families, to elders in the community, and they're not getting paid adequate wages. And right now, they continue to provide services in our community and continue to put themselves at risk every day that they go into work. And so I think as a state, we need to be ready to talk about what reimbursement rates look like and how those services need to be available in every community across the state, because we as a collective state will have to manage and support the mental health needs of our communities. And I think we can focus on crisis supports now, but long term, there's going to need to be some recovery efforts, and to make sure that folks have the supports they need. I think that it will take prioritizing those services. I hope that answers your question. Let me know if I veered off at all. Daniel says, I heard a great quote that a pandemic doesn't so much create cracks in our communities and safety nets as it does expose them and highlight them. Yeah. So what cracks in our communities? Who has come up or who's become more visible as being vulnerable or kind of missing out? So direct care workers are a huge community of folks. I live on Timber Lane, as I mentioned, and Mobius has a neighborhood, apartment development here. For folks who aren't aware, Mobius provides developmentally disabled individuals with community and residential services. And workers' pay rate is not high enough. And so folks who are putting themselves out there right now, there's been a lot of coverage of that. And I appreciate that. But they've been doing hard work and not been compensated fairly forever. And so I think that's really coming up. And I appreciate that that folks are noticing and speaking up. The healthcare workers, so environmental services folks, janitors, people providing our day-to-day essential services, in addition to those direct care workers, I think wages and health benefits and coverage, and I think that goes without saying that we need to look at how we pay people who are providing what we now consider essential services and how much we demonstrate that respect accordingly. Folks in lower socioeconomic brackets overall, I know Governor Mills just announced I don't know if moratorium is the right word, but a freeze on evictions in the month of May. And I think this is a great start. But what about June? And what about back rent for someone who can't make rent now? What will be different at the end of this? And I know there's been a $5 million allocation for rental assistance in the state, which for folks who qualify, you can check out at mainehousing.org. For folks who qualify, it's $500 towards rent, which is great. And I'm sure that will help people. But for folks who are not in the rental market, $500 does not cover a month's rent. And so it's a great start. And I appreciate that the governor is thinking and getting started on supporting those folks who are renting or who are facing eviction. But there's a lot more to be done. And I think that some of that will come down from the federal government. Some of it will need to be really prioritized by our state government. So I think those wages of low income workers, housing security and stability. We have a stay-at-home order, and if folks do not have a home, how can they maintain their own personal safety, and how can our communities be safe? So I think those are two big ones. And then I would add just the mental health services, as I mentioned before. Let's see. I'm interested if other people, if I'm missing something, or if people have an experience that is vastly different from that, what they would say. I think, as I mentioned initially, seasonal workers, seasonal businesses, and the fishing industry. The fishing and aquaculture industry relies on restaurants. Restaurants in this area are often seasonal, if not closed in the winter, then reliant on a summer income to really make ends meet. And I think the economics of that and how we look at those specific industries in our economic recovery will be really important. That I know Representative Pingree mentioned some state and municipal funding coming from the federal government that is aimed at supporting municipalities of 500,000 people or greater. And as she joked last night, that's her entire congressional district. So we need to make sure that the federal government and the state government are looking at what rural small communities need and how our solutions are tailored towards those and are not a blanket solution coming from DC, because as Governor Mills said in her State of the Union, we are Maine and we need to be focused on the things that Mainers need. And that's going to look a lot different than other parts of our country, and that's okay. But we need to really, I think, speak up for our fishing communities and our seasonal businesses. I know, talking to folks out on Monhegan, they have a much shorter tourism season than the mainland because of weather conditions. And so even that, of the length of their season, if it's interrupted, proportionally, it's much greater to have a 4 or 6 week interruption to their tourism season because it is so much smaller. And I think that's important to consider, again, of kind of the specifics of our community and what it looks like to live here. Farmers. Yeah, farming that's a great question. I think there's been a huge effort, and I'm grateful for it, to look at how we decentralize agriculture. And that, I know the Maine Soil Conservation Association has put together materials around how to access agricultural products in your community. I know you can do that with seafood. There are lots of folks selling locally to buy. I know lots of people have been enjoying some clams, oysters, lobster, lots of good stuff. And I know farmers are trying to get started with an early spring. Lots of greens coming from local farms, early CSAs, people trying to coordinate efforts and to do some larger purchasing, or having some opportunities to buy directly from the farmers. I think that our community is incredible. I know we've got a lot of small farms. We've got dairy, we've got meat, we've got produce. And I know that people are really, really looking for ways to support local businesses that are continuing to be open. And that's one easy, great way to do that, is to buy local products when you can. I know we had a great quiche from our local farmer last night, fresh eggs. And so I'd encourage everyone to do that. And it is also CSA sign up time for people who are interested in community supported agriculture. It's what we traditionally, for folks who don't know, I used to be an organic farmer when I lived out in Washington State, and that those upstart costs in the early spring can be pretty insurmountable. And so when you invest in a farm through a CSA, you're really investing in that farm for its entire season. And it enables that farmer to come up with some of the upfront costs for seed and seed materials, compost, manure, things that they need to get started. And I hope that we see a lot more folks able to benefit from local agriculture, and as also a way to support local businesses. So I think those are great initiatives. And I'll post, I know I saw a map that's interactive. You can find out where to purchase things. I'll include that on my Facebook page for folks who are interested. Yeah, Will emphasizes organic farmer. Yes, I harvested a lot of beets and carrots in my day until I moved back to Maine. So let's see. I just wanted to quickly go through a couple more things I don't think I had a chance to cover. We talked about the isolation. New Hope for Women, so domestic violence resource centers across the state. I started my social work career there. I was a hotline advocate about 12 years ago, and it's what inspired me to go back to graduate school. I attended the University of Maine through Orono, and our community struggles. So domestic violence is pervasive. It doesn't know socioeconomics. It doesn't know, there are no boundaries to it. And when we are asking people to be home, we're also saying that we acknowledge and respect the fact that that puts more people at risk. I talked about child abuse earlier. It's also the reality for people in abusive relationships. So if you are looking for a way to support the community right now, you can do that by donating to New Hope for Women. They have transitioned to an online chat service from 1 to 5 each weekday, Monday through Friday. They also have a 24-hour hotline I've included on my resource guide. It's it's an important service that we need in our communities right now. And I'd love to see folks be able to reach out and to donate to support their work. I talked about food insecurity. One thing I didn't mention, the Fill the Bus at Main Street Grocery. So the CLC YMCA is hosting a weekly Fill the Bus opportunity where you can donate groceries in a safe way. And I know Twin Villages Food Bank Farm just donated a ton of produce, I think 4,000 or 5,000 pounds of produce to the lunch program through the Y. So that's awesome. You can also donate directly to the newcastlefoodpantry.org, and that supports the Lincoln County Food Initiative. I think earlier I forgot to mention the Lincoln County Regional Planning Commission and Healthy Lincoln County as people who are also participating organizations in the food initiative. Yeah, and let's see, just quick updates on the financial programs. I know the Paycheck Protection Program has maxed out. I think $349 billion was allocated 2 weeks ago, and that was dispersed in its entirety by yesterday. So Representative Pingree attended our Lincoln County Democrats meeting last night, which was a great surprise, along with Governor Mills, and she talked about prioritizing continuing to fund for small businesses, and I think that's important for our local businesses. Department of Labor, I know the additional federal funding, the $600 a week, has been approved and is coming through, so folks receiving unemployment should begin seeing that additional, and it's retroactive, so they should see that in their weekly pay. And I think that mostly covers the stuff I wanted to go over today. I appreciate so many people coming out. I had a funny story. So I've been looking for humor, and one of the things that we did at home this week was we showed Kestrel, my daughter, Pollyanna, the original. And I loved it, and it's a great story, and it's nice to have something inspirational. And so that's been on my mind of how we, without being naive, how we continue to have a positive outlook and experience moments in our day of gladness and joy. And last night I was getting ready for a couple of evening meetings I had, and my daughter Kestrel came up to me and said, Mama, there's something good I have to tell you. And I asked her, what's that? And she said to me, well, now that your meetings are online, you don't have to brush your teeth before you go because no one will smell your bad breath. And I got some laughs out of that, and it just it helps me to think about the joy and gladness I hope that each of us can find in our days at one point or another amidst the stress or the sadness or the grief that we're all experiencing. So thank you to everyone who came out today. I really appreciate it. For folks who live in the district, our primary has been moved from June 9th to July 14th. So note that on your calendars. I've already requested and been approved for my no excuse absentee ballot. You too can do that. Ballots will be distributed around starting May 30th. So look for those as an opportunity to vote. And please check out lydiacrafts.com. We have a mailing list, ways to get involved. We're going to have new volunteer opportunities coming up. And I'd love to keep you updated about the post, about the campaign. So thank you everyone for being here, and take care. Enjoy your weekend. Bye.